evening would not have been possible without Coastal Conservation League, Oceana, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, Southern Environmental Law Center, Conservation Voters, and SODA. We couldn't have done it without our allies, and we couldn't have done it without you, all of you, who have tolerated the calls and the emails and petition drives. Thank you. We made a difference back in 2016, and we can make a difference again. Another major contributor to Don't Drill Lowcountry's campaign is Shepard Fairey, the internationally renowned street artist who was born and raised in Charleston. Shepard granted us the right to his image, Paradise Turns. And if you look at that and you've looked around the room, you've seen this image. This was our logo, is our logo. And we have used that for our campaign on posters around town, on postcards, which we'll get around to talking about later. The image depicts a couple on a beach lounging under an umbrella as the tide approaches. An air of menace is introduced by a forest of oil derricks looming in the background. An inscription in the top left corner reads, "Enjoy paradise until the tide turns." But we're not going to let that happen. Of the image, Shepard said, "Beyond just the environmental hazards of oil spills and climate change, the idea of trouble in paradise is also about our lack of foresight in transitioning away from oil, which is finite, to energy sources which are renewable. The tide will turn, and the question is whether we'll be technically equipped to adapt, or will the things oil provides that we take for granted halt catastrophically." Tonight, you will be invited, and some of you have already done this over at the table with the postcards. You'll be invited to write postcards to Governor McMaster, asking him to help turn the tide by asking BOEM and the administration to oppose offshore drilling. More of that later. In addition to the posters that we have, Holy City Brewing generously lent their support to Don't Drill Lowcountry by brewing and donating Holy City Brewing Paradise Beer. Originally with, can you hold that up, Don? Is it still there? I think that's the last of the original. A few weeks before the beer's launch in March 2016, the President Obama closed our coast to offshore drilling, so we toasted our victory with Paradise Beer. And it's still brewed by Holy City. This is Paradise Beer. It's in a different can, but it's Paradise Beer, and we're going to save paradise. No doubt about it. Please take a moment to thank or drink a toast to Shepard Fairey and Holy City Brewing for their generous donations, as well as to our sponsors for this event, South Carolina Coastal Conservation League, Oceana, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, Southern Environmental Law Center. Thank you. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. I'd now like to introduce Jones-Turansky, Chief Conservation Officer with Coastal Conservation League. Lisa?
Alice. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is a great crowd, and I have to say thank you to the Don't Drill Lowcountry group that got this all started right here in our own backyard. It's an extremely important issue, and it's so wonderful to be here tonight with friends and community leaders in one of the best places on the planet. It's official. It's been voted on. And to also be with leaders who haven't shied away from the important issue of offshore drilling. Thank you to the mayors that took time out of their busy schedules to be here, and for elected officials that you'll hear from later tonight as well. But thank you also to every single one of you who took time out of your busy schedules to be here. It really means a lot, and it's the way that we're going to move forward on this issue for the benefit of our community. Specifically, I would like to thank Mayor Page from Mount Pleasant, Mayor Green from Allendale, Mayor Goodwin from Folly Beach, and I think later tonight we will have Mayor O'Neill joining us from Sullivan's Island. I want to kick off the evening tonight with a definitive statement about tonight's topic. Offshore drilling is a dangerous proposition that offers no benefits to our communities. 129 coastal communities up and down the eastern seaboard have agreed. They came together just last year and officially opposed offshore drilling. This year, State Representative Leon Stavronakis introduced House Bill 4307. It's a bill that would prohibit the approval of offshore oil infrastructure that would allow for the transportation of oil off of our coast. And Representative Mark Sanford, our congressman right here from the 1st District, introduced the Coastal Economies Protection Act, which would suspend oil and gas activities off of the East Coast for 10 years. So we have a lot of great leadership on this issue. Our leaders are doing their jobs. They're representing us in their respective roles, but they really need our support as citizens. So tonight we're here to thank our elected officials, but also to do what we need to do as individuals and citizens. And we're going to walk you through the steps of what it takes to get involved. We need each one of you here tonight to take 2 actions. First, we need you to comment online to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and we'll tell you how to do that later. We'll actually walk you through the steps online to doing that. And second, we need you to thank Governor McMaster for his opposition to offshore drilling, but to also encourage him to contact the administration, the presidential administration, and BOEM about his position on offshore drilling, and to get his position on the record by August 17th, which is the BOEM deadline. So I'm also would just like to encourage you to thank your representative if you see them here tonight, whether it's your mayor or your senator or your representative. It really means a lot to folks who put their heart and soul into these issues and represent us at the state and local levels, to hear from you that it means a lot to you. So please do that. Also, the last thing that you can do tonight, but it's equally as important to all of the other things I mentioned, is to show support with a donation. And over here, Tina is raising her hand. She can take checks, credit cards, any form of currency that you would like to give to Don't Drill Lowcountry or any other partners that are here tonight. So if you would like to do that, if you feel so moved, they're here for that. Finally, at the end, this evening you're going to hear from 3 important elected leaders, and then you will hear from Peg Howell, a petroleum engineer and founder of the Stop Offshore Drilling Across the Atlantic group in Litchfield, and now it's an active group all up and down the coast. And then we will have questions and answers for Peg and for some of the elected officials who have agreed to stick around for those questions. So Let's get started. To kick us off, I'd like to introduce City of Charleston Council Member Mike Seekings. Councilman Seekings represents Charleston's 8th District and has been a voice of reason on many important issues, including public transportation, pedestrian safety, and of course tonight's topic, offshore drilling. He has been chosen by the city paper readers as Charleston's best city council member for 7 years in a row. It's my distinct privilege tonight to welcome to the podium to say a few words about offshore drilling and what's at risk here in Charleston. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Mayor Green, Mayor Page, Mayor Goodwin, Representative Cogswell, Senator Campsen, ladies and gentlemen of great numbers, I cannot tell you what an honor it is to be standing here tonight before you to just say a few words, and I know it's hot and there's free beer, but a few words about a fight that's been going on for a while, which we've had some successes in, and we will continue to do so because of you. Mayor Goodwin, I remember when we took to the beach of Folly not too long ago, well maybe it was about 4 years ago now, in the hot sand, and many of you were there, and we stood there and said there will be no drilling for so long that our feet literally blistered. It was that hot, and that is how committed your local representatives and your municipalities are to protecting what we have here both on and offshore. I've gotten to do a lot of really cool things in my life. Being a representative of the city of Charleston is one of them for sure. But many moons ago, I was, believe it or not, a trained geophysicist. I actually wrote a thesis on structural geology on the coastline of the United States. And so I speak a little bit about this, now not as much as I'm sure that Peg is going to tell you about, but I know a little bit about this. And what I can tell you is a few things. There's not really any oil out there. If there was, I can assure you this conversation would have been had many years ago, and they would have been fighting to get out there many years ago. You ever been to Santa Barbara? See all those big oil rigs right off the beautiful coast of California? They're there because there's a bunch of oil. So here's sort of my view of the world as a geologist and geophysicist, an elected official, and someone who lives in your community. What's going on here? We have a beautiful coastline that supports us in the lifestyle to which we've very much become accustomed. It is the lifeblood of our economy. It is who we are. We're a coastal community. It is our soul, our heart. And the concept that someone, for political gain, and really political gain only, will go and open up the waters off of our shore to do something that I actually sort of took a fancy to tonight, to do seismic airgun blasting is somewhat inconceivable. I don't know what seismic airgun blasting is, but it can't be any good, right? It can't be any good. And they're going to go do it knowing what's going out there. Now, when this first came up, I know Senator Campsen, you've been there from the very beginning, I called Congressmember Sanford to ask him about it. I said, what's going on with all these leases that are going to go on offshore? What does it all mean? And he said he didn't really know. He'd look into it, and that was a frank answer, and he came back and told me. And one of the things that was part and parcel of this program of opening up offshore drilling, but more importantly seismic testing, was there would be contracts with the federal government where the results would not be shared with local governments. So they go out and do seismic testing, and they'd send all the results back to Washington, and we wouldn't know what was going on. Well, the good news is we're smarter than that. So we got behind and said, well, that's unacceptable, and we were successful once. Well, here we are again, and I suspect we will continue to be successful. So let me just say this. Who we are and who we will always be is in every one of you. And if we needed something, you'd be asking for it. And what I can tell you we need now is we need to be a community that recognizes the importance of being together to stop something that is really nothing but a ruse. I mean, think about it. Think about it. The other thing I learned as a geologist is oil and gas is a fossil fuel. It's also a finite supply. I have no idea how much oil there is out there in the world. None. Nobody does. Pretty good idea there's not much off the shores of South Carolina. But no idea how much there is in the world. But sooner or later, it's going to go away. And the whole idea that we're spending time and energy going out there and trying to find out what we already know, that it's not out there, a finite resource, and not dedicating our efforts on doing something that's long-term and sustainable, to me is a fight worth having. And I invite all of you to join with me. I can tell you, when Lisa called and asked me to do this a couple weeks, three or 4 weeks ago, I said I would. Last night I was actually talking to one of her colleagues about this talk, and he reported back to her about the talk, and we were sitting in Rhode Island. So I literally flew in for this, and that's how important it is. So to all of you that are here tonight, we're here with and for you. But we can't do it without you. And I will just say, as I live right across that harbor, that anything that jeopardizes what you see out that window, and anything that jeopardizes who we are, is worth fighting for every day. Keep it up, get active, contribute, and know that one of the things that you can do, and I ask you to do it as often as you can, is vote. Vote. You've got elected officials here tonight who care, mayors who came here, who are here to protect their community. Vote. Get out there and let people know that you are the people to be heard. Let the governor know that this coastline in our community doesn't want offshore drilling. We don't want it. We don't want seismic testing. We don't want seismic air gun blasting. So as an old geophysicist and now an older city council member, I can just say I cannot imagine any reason why we won't be successful, because the truth is this community doesn't need what someone's trying to foist upon us. So Lisa, everybody, thank you for having me. I'm going to be here with this fight, Mayor, for as long as it takes, and as long as you all will have me. And thank you so much for your support in this really important mission that we have, which is to protect everything we are, who we are, and where we'll be for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilman Seekings. I was a little nervous when I heard that my colleague was having drinks with you in Rhode Island. I'm glad that you showed up, and I appreciate your support on this issue. Next, we have South Carolina Representative William Cogswell. He represents Charleston's District 110. That's some of downtown and Mount Pleasant. It's also where I live, so Representative Cogswell holds a special place in my heart. He's well known as a conservationist. He proves it by donating his time to organizations in the community and by being a part of good bills. This year he was a co-sponsor on Representative Stavronakis' bill, along with Representatives Satilli, Newton, Smith, Gilliard, Mack, Bernstein, Brown, Herb Kurzman, and Crosby. It's a good team of folks representing us in the State House. So please join me in welcoming Representative Cogswell to the podium.
So I get to follow the geologist. Just my luck. No, thank you for having me. This is a great organization. As I said to some folks earlier tonight, candidly, I'm here to learn as much as anything, because this is something that is relatively new to me, but the more I learn about it, the more passionate I become in defending our shores against what is trying to be attempted. So I'm just glad to be here to learn, frankly. And I think I'm the guy in the middle here, because clearly Councilman Seekings is very well versed in this, and this is something that Senator Campsen has been working on for quite some time. So really, my talk will be, well, my comments are pretty much over. I only have a note card to write my speech on. But you know, this is something that we need to pay attention to. I like to say that this region, the Lowcountry, is really a brand, and it's a very valuable brand, and it needs to be protected. And when you talk about brands, I mean, you know, it really is key to our quality of life that we have here in the Lowcountry. And the Lowcountry, our quality of life, is really dependent on our natural environment. So we need to protect that at all costs. I'm breaking the damn lecture. So in any event, I am fully behind the efforts of this organization. I'm glad and proud to be a sponsor, even though I'm a freshman up there. I've started to make my voice a little bit more known, and that has rubbed some people the wrong way. But you know, these are things that I find I feel are very important, and they really need to have a loud voice. The last thing I'm going to end on, Mike mentioned the point that you need to go out and vote. I can't stress how important voting, especially in primaries where everything's kind of rigged to, how important it is for people to turn out to vote. I will be the first to tell you that I was elected. I like to say to people, more people voted for Wanda's homecoming queen than voted for me. But it's true. A few hundred votes can really make a difference in an election. All it takes is one, and we need people up there to fight the good fight and to protect our wonderful natural environments. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the real expert, Senator Campsen. I appreciate again you all having me here.
Thank you so much, Representative Cogswell. And finally, for our elected officials tonight, we have Senator Chip Campsen, our fearless leader in the state Senate, representing District 43, an area that covers more than 80 miles of our state's coast. Senator Campsen is an Isle of Palms resident, an attorney, and I read also the owner of a passenger vessel company. So really tied to this issue. He understands the industry, the needs of our community, and the risks associated with offshore drilling exploration. Senator Campsen is a champion of all things conservation, including the very important South Carolina Conservation Bank, an agency that's protected more than 300,000 acres of valuable cultural and land assets across our state. He is a champion who has led the fight that resulted in staving off offshore drilling here in 2016, and he's stepping up to the plate again this year. We're so grateful for everything that you do, Senator Campsen, and please join me in giving him a warm round of applause as we welcome him to the podium.
Well, Representative Cogswell, I just got a text that the Wando homecoming queen is going to file a run against you in the next primary. But I want you to know I'm going to support you because, in all seriousness, you're a freshman, but you have been a fine lawmaker. You truly are a man of your own convictions, which is difficult to do, particularly as a freshman up there in the legislature, and you've been a great champion for conservation on all fronts, and I want you to know I appreciate it. And even if the Wando homecoming queen does run against you, I'm still supporting you, okay? Although you are not near as attractive as she is, okay? Well, I'm glad to be with y'all tonight, and today, what I did today was I've been working very hard and I needed a day off, and I own the business so I can take a day off during the week. And I went tarpon fishing down in the Ace Basin today. The South Edisto River, Fish Creek behind Otter Island, St. Helena Sound. Probably saw one other boat. I saw one other boat all day long. There are almost no places on the East Coast that you can spend a day in such a beautiful estuary in the heart of the Ace Basin and just see one other person all day long on public waters. And that is indicative of the tremendous quality of life and the unique ecosystems that we have protected here along South Carolina's coast. In fact, we have a coast that is dominated by protected ecosystems like the Ace Basin, the Santee Delta, Winyaw Bay, resorts like Kiowa, one of the finest 5-star resorts. The Sanctuary down at Kiowa is a 5-star hotel. I spent the night there several years ago, and I told my wife afterwards, I said, you know the last time I spent the night on Kiowa? She said, no. I said, it was 1972. I was 13 years old. We took a Willis Jeep that had a bent frame. You couldn't go more than 35 miles an hour. It'd shake you to death. And we left the Isle of Palms, my dad, my brother and I. My brother was 9 years old. We went down to Kiowa before Kiowa was developed. There was a handful of beachfront homes. We rode out on the beach. We went to the north end. We camped out behind the sand dunes, hunted ducks the next morning in a pond. If any of you have been to Kiowa, the ocean course has a pond right behind it. And my younger brother killed his first duck in that pond, a widgeon. We spent the night, it rained. I spent the night, I burrowed a area out underneath the Willis Jeep to spend the night to get out of the rain. And my brother killed his first duck, and I asked my wife, I said, what do you think is the night I enjoyed the most on Kiowa? One here in the sanctuary or one in that Willis Jeep? She knew the answer. In all seriousness, it was the night under the Willis Jeep. Because it was an example, a taste of what the Lowcountry used to be. Because in my lifetime, I can see that we've lost a lot. And in my mind, Kiowa was a much more beautiful place then than any night in the sanctuary. But we still have done a great job preserving a lot of it. And we do have the Ace Basin, we do have the Santee Delta. And quality of life and preserving those natural resources are critical to our prosperity, economically and just as the quality of life that we all enjoy. And the reason that I am against offshore drilling primarily really is I know, because I know by experience. Lisa indicated I own a passenger vessel company. I do, and I've built boats down in the Gulf of Mexico, big passenger boats. And I've spent a lot of time in Louisiana, the Panhandle of Florida, where those boats were built. I brought those boats back across the Gulf of Mexico, either around the tip of Florida or across Florida in the Okeechobee Waterway, back up to Charleston. So I've really experienced firsthand the impact that offshore drilling has onshore, and the onshore infrastructure necessary to sustain offshore drilling is highly industrial, very extensive and expansive, and very unseemly, which is a kind way to put it. And I can tell you, when I make this point to other folks in the maritime industry who've spent time in the Gulf of Mexico, and many have. Many folks here in the maritime industry spent time running crew boats or supply boats and working in the offshore oil patch there in the Gulf. I've had many of them come to me when I make these statements or write an op-ed about this. My main point being that the main reason that we don't want offshore drilling, certainly an oil spill, the chance or threat of an oil spill is an issue, but there's no certainty that an oil spill will happen. But one thing that is certain that will happen is the coast will be industrialized in order to support that offshore drilling. And I tell people, if you don't believe me, there's a little program called Google Earth, and go Google Earth Beaumont, Texas, and Deer Park, Texas, and Port Fourchon, Louisiana, and Morgan City, Louisiana, just to name a few, and you tell me where on our pristine coast is that degree of industrialization going to occur to support the offshore drilling that would happen off our coast? And I talk to people and they say, I talked to someone today, someone who's very engaged in public policy, very like-minded with me, actually sitting, viewing the great vista of the Ace Basin. No other structure in sight, looking across the South Edisto River. Had no idea that anything was needed onshore to support offshore drilling. No idea whatsoever. A very informed and educated person. It's utterly astounding to me that people don't see this. Now, Louisiana, it developed in the middle part of the even early part of the 20th century. And it has a very different ecosystem. Bayous, a lot of wetlands, few places of highland. Morgan City is kind of, you go through the bayous and then there's Morgan City just before you get off into the Gulf. You got some barrier islands, but it has a coast that really couldn't be developed the way that we're developed right there on the Gulf. But you take South, where is it going to happen in South? Is it going to happen in Santee Delta, where we have the Santee Delta Wildlife Management Area, the old historic Santee Gun Club, 27,000 acres of controlled impoundment for overwinters more waterfowl than any place on the Atlantic Flyway? We're going to do it on the Yawkey Wildlife Refuge, which Tom Yawkey gave to the state of South Carolina before there was such a thing as a conservation easement, donated to the state of South Carolina. It's going to happen down there at Bear Island, or you're going to put it next to Kiowa. Even though I like sleeping under Jeeps at Kiowa, most people don't. They like the sanctuary. You can put it down there next to the sanctuary, or Seabrook. There's no place whatsoever. It's really an esoteric debating issue for two reasons. Number one, because of what I'm saying, but number two, because look at what's happened to the oil industry. Because I burn a lot of diesel fuel in passenger vessels, I have a reason to keep track of what's going on. And plus, I think it's just amazing what's happened in the oil industry with production in North America. It costs $70 to $100. You got to have oil at $70 to $100 a barrel to make an offshore platform profitable down the road. But it comes to onshore oil production, the break-even cost has dropped since 2013 from $85 a barrel to $35 a barrel in some places. Utterly astounding. And I've been to Alberta, duck hunting and goose hunting up in Canada, where they support, and I've been on the farms and all that support that onshore drilling. Just look at the infrastructure in Alberta. Go Google Alberta, Canada. In Edmonton, which is in the province of Alberta. Google Edmonton. Look at the onshore infrastructure necessary for land-based. You got a lot more needed for offshore-based, but for land-based oil production, it's utterly astounding. It took me an hour and a half to get out of Edmonton before I got beyond the industrialization of Edmonton to get out into the hitherlands, into the farmland to go duck hunting. People don't even think of this. But you've had a tremendous transformation in the oil industry. Jeff Curry, this is not just my opinion, Jeff Curry, head of commodities trading worldwide for Goldman Sachs, okay? It's not Chip Campsen, it's Goldman Sachs, the guy who bets millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on commodity trading. He calls it the new oil order. That oil has become a market, an industry that has shifted from a high fixed cost, long lead time, long time before you get to producing revenue endeavor, to a high variable cost, low fixed cost, short lead time endeavor when it comes to onshore in North America oil production. he uses the analogy, you can turn the spigot on and you can turn the spigot off, which means when prices go, this is why you've seen, I said this about 3 years ago, I had people in the press and all scoff at me. But what I said has been vindicated. Oil prices have been kept low because the onshore producers in North America, they can turn the spigot on and they can turn it off. It's a low cost, short lead time, quick endeavor. They come from $85 to $35 a barrel oil for a break-even point. And so the truth is, that's why this it's really befuddling to me why we're even having this debate. Because if you look at what's happened in the oil industry, it has utterly been transformed. I think that transformation is very important too, by the way. I mean, I think geopolitically, it has neutered OPEC. Very important for our national security that happened. But offshore drilling ain't neutering OPEC, okay? It may neuter our quality of life, but it ain't gonna neuter OPEC, and it's not gonna have any geopolitical benefits for us. But what has happened in the industry at large has. And so why would we support risking our quality of life for a fool's errand? Because it is a fool's errand to think that you can go offshore and build a rig and produce oil at less than $35 a barrel, because if you don't, these onshore producers in the Dakotas and in Alberta, Canada, and the Permian basins and all these basins around the country, they're going to turn those oil spigots on and they're going to undercut you, and you're going to lose financially. And so it's very important that we not let this oil exploration and exploitation off the coast occur, because there's no place for that onshore infrastructure. It will destroy our quality of life. And also, I want to tell you, and I got authorization to do this, I talked to the governor on my way back from tarpon fishing. And he told me that, you know, he knows my position. I kind of restated it. And he told me that you go ahead if you want to. If you want to tell the crowd, he wholeheartedly agrees with my position. That the truth is, we have developed a land use pattern on the coast of South Carolina that is wholly incompatible with the onshore infrastructure necessary to support oil. The bell has already rung. If it were 1940, it wouldn't be that way. But it ain't 1940, it's 2017. And you have the Ace Basin, you have the Santee Delta, you have resorts, high dollar property, you have Folly Beach, the Edge of America. We wouldn't want to ruin the Edge of America, would we, Mayor? My district is in 85 miles of the coast from Bulls Bay to Port Royal Sound to the south. Every single municipality and 2 counties in that district have endorsed and passed resolutions opposing offshore drilling. I mean, we have folks from the upstate and the Midlands and people from off, okay? I'm going to use some of Arthur Ravenel's language, off, people from off. They ain't been years, they come years. But they ain't even come yet, they're still in the upstate. That's about the only place you find the support. They're not going to suffer the quality of life costs that we are going to suffer here on the coast. They're not even in touch with the quality of life that we have that needs to be protected. Everybody, every municipality in my expansive Senate district, Mayor Page, I appreciate you doing that, passing that resolution. Every municipality has passed a resolution and opposed to this. So the people who it's going to affect, unanimously, at least their representatives, have spoken up against this. And I appreciate y'all coming out tonight, and I encourage you to express your opinions to your elected representatives and your appointed representatives up in Washington before August 17th. Thank you.
It is a privilege to introduce our next speaker tonight. My friend, my heroine, as in hero, female, Peg Howell. Peg is a founding member of the SOTA leadership team. When you hear her story, you'll see that she traveled a long way over many years, but you're younger than I am, to get here, to this place, this point. In the 1970s, Peg was a petroleum engineer and the first female company man, an oil rig supervisor in the Gulf of Mexico. She went on to complete graduate coursework in petroleum engineering and economics at Louisiana State University. Then, because she didn't have anything else to do, she went to, no, I'm just kidding. She went on to earn her MBA at Harvard Business School. She's very smart. For the past 25 years, Peg has led her own company, Howell Consulting, and has been a business consultant and executive coach to a variety of industries around the world. In 1994, Peg and her husband John Thomas retired to North Litchfield, but her retirement was short-lived. In early 2015, when the news broke that governors of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia were promoting seismic testing and offshore oil and gas drilling in the South Atlantic, Peg rallied opponents against the plan. She helped form SOTA, which is a grassroots citizen organization to stop offshore drilling in the Atlantic. That's what SOTA stands for. Since that time, Peg has worked tirelessly to oppose plans for oil and gas exploration through education and advocacy. Traveling up and down the coast, Peg presents and consults regularly with citizens, businesses, industry groups, clubs, local and elected officials, both individually and at public forums. She alerts people about the potential effect of seismic testing and oil and gas exploration on the environment, on marine life, adjacent populations, and way of life. Of the many events along the coast at which Peg appeared, her presentations in Washington, D.C., at a Sea Party Coalition event in 2015, and another Sea Party Coalition press conference in 2016, and Blue Vision Summit in 2017, gave a wider audience the opportunity to be wowed by her, to hear her speak about the risks of seismic testing and oil drilling. And Governor McLaren and I had the privilege of traveling for those events with Peg, and we're the Mix Slicks Chicks. Governor and I are the backup singers to this rock star. Well, more recently, on July 12th, our rock star, Peg, was invited to testify in Washington, D.C. before the House Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources on the impact that offshore drilling and seismic blasting in the Atlantic will have on coastal economies and the people who live and visit here. She rocked. It's worth seeing the video of her testimony and her statements to the panel, which consisted of Peg, who was against oil drilling, and 4 other people who weren't against it. And it was wonderful. So needless to say, Peg has been an indispensable part of our effort to stop offshore drilling. So please join me in welcoming Peg Howell.
Get my everything all set up here. First of all, Senator Campsen, thank you so much for your work, and you said it all. I mean, really, we could go home now because you explained all the good reasons why we don't want to do this off our coast. And let me also say to Representative Cogswell and to the mayors and to Councilmember Seekings, we could not be here in this conversation tonight if it wasn't for all the hard work y'all have done in passing these resolutions along the coast and making people understand that this is not what South Carolina is about. We do not want the oil and gas business here. It's a little tricky speaking to a group like this because I imagine a lot of you know something about this and some of you know nothing about this. So let me first see, by showing hands, how many of you have this is the first time you have started to educate yourself about what this means about offshore oil and gas drilling? Okay, great. So we've got some newbies in the group, and of course, after I get done, we're going to get the beer going and tell them anything more that they want to know that they don't already know. So as Alice said, I used to be one of the bad guys. I started my career as an offshore drilling engineer, and I drilled oil wells in the Gulf of Mexico, and I saw the error of my ways, and here I am today. But it was a good way to get the oil companies to pay for a college education, and that's really what I wanted. So you've heard all about who we are. SOTA has been fighting very hard for the last 2.5 years to educate and advocate. And I'll tell you, we started really with thinking that if we just educated everybody about this issue, that would be the end of it, right, Senator? You just let them know what all the good reasons are for this to not be happening off our coast, and that would be the end of it. And we were pretty happy that the first proposed program that came up in 2014 originally was limited to the 4 states in the mid and South Atlantic, off the coast of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. They put a 50-mile barrier so nobody would see what was going on out there. Little did they think that Senator Campsen would be out telling everybody, but it's going to be on the coast. It's going to be on shore too. And so we were queued up for 2021 was going to be the lease sale for our coast. And because of all the good work and all the hard fight, we were able to get it canceled. And President Obama in March of 2016, just a year ago, it seems like a heck of a lot longer than that, was able to stop drilling off our coast. However, April 28th of this year, a new song was sang by our current president, issuing an executive order opening up, once again, the coast. And in fact, this order is far more far-reaching than the last potential. You can see from this map, compared to that gold map that I showed you before, that they're considering all the way to the south end of New Jersey down to the mid-coast of Florida. By the way, we know the president's home is farther south on Florida. But this area has not yet been narrowed in any way. There's no conversation yet about a 50-mile barrier. It's all up for grabs. It was interesting for me to take a look at the picture of people who were applauding the president. Many of you know Lisa Murkowski, probably because of a lot of the work she's done recently on health care. And you might recognize some of the other folks in here. This gentleman from South Louisiana, as you know, was Mr. Scalise, was unfortunately hit in that by that crazy man who was shooting people at the baseball game. So we all know Senator Scalise. There's several other folks in that picture from the coastal Louisiana or Louisiana in general and Texas, which you would expect. And of course, Murkowski's from Alaska. They're all there to protect the industry that already exists along their coast. What I found interesting was that gentleman's picture. Does anybody know who he is?
Jeff Duncan.
Jeff Duncan. Does anybody know where Jeff Duncan's from?
Anderson.
Anderson, South Carolina. Now isn't that interesting? So this is why we are still here, and this is why we're fighting, because it's not the rational arguments that are going to protect us. It's really getting to help people in the upstate understand that they're wanting something to happen on our coast, and they're not giving us the opportunity to make that decision. So because of Jeff Duncan, thank you for being in that picture, Jeff, we all are going to continue this fight. So this order that the president put out had 3 key points in it, it hit on multiple things, but 3 points that I want to highlight. The first is that it opened a new leasing program. So every 5 years, the Department of Interior is charged with asking all the governors that have that are along the U.S. coast, do you want offshore oil and gas drilling? And most of those years, the governors in the Atlantic said, no, we don't, except for 2014 when those 4 governors that I mentioned from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia put our coast at risk. So because of this executive order, we are once again in the process of having our governors asked, do you want offshore drilling? And fortunately this time, Governor McMaster is saying, hell no, we don't want offshore drilling off the coast of South Carolina. So please make sure you say a big thank you to the governor, because that's a very important voice that goes to Washington on this issue. That said, we're not out of harm's way. He didn't really, get us entirely off the hook, but it helped. So the executive order opens up a new program, the 2019 to 2024 program that is just being launched and that you're going to be asked to comment on tonight.